I also think it's really important. I still do this to this day, which is if you don't know how to do something, it's great to find people that know how to do it better than you and ask for their help. I think that sometimes people have a problem admitting they don't know how to do something. And I don't know if it's that fear that, oh, I'm going to show my vulnerability if I say I don't know how to do this, but I am very open to saying, I know this is what I want to get done. I don't know how to get there. You know how to do it really well. Will you work with me? Can I hire you to help me get this done?
Hello, you are listening to the Late Bloomer Living podcast. I'm Yvonne Marchese, your host, and I'm so happy you're here. I created this podcast to give you inspiration and let you know you're not alone in feeling stuck in midlife. I also invite you to join the Age Agitators Club for women, where we come together monthly to hatch our plans for making waves as we age. Being part of this community for women will remind you on a regular basis that you're not too old, and it's never too late to do that thing you've been thinking about. You can find more information at latebloomerliving.com/community, and I hope to see you there. Hello, my friend. I have a question for you. When you think about getting old, does it scare you? So I'll tell you right now, I've always been more afraid of getting old than I was of dying. And I believe that that's because in the media and in everyday conversation, we're constantly told that aging is bad and it's something to be avoided, but really there's no avoiding it. So what might happen if we embrace it? I mean, old isn't a four-letter word, but it might as well be. And if we embrace what could be good about aging, I feel like there's so much more possible for us. For me, starting to go along that journey has opened up my attitudes towards what's possible for the rest of my life. And it's made me feel a little more excited and experimental about what I might do next. And how much more fun is that than dreading it and being fearful of it? So I'm so thrilled to introduce you to today's guest, who has made a beautiful, inspiring film that celebrates the wisdom of adults that are 75 to 100 years old in the film. It's a documentary film. These people are living their lives to the fullest. Her name is Sky Bergman. She's an award-winning photographer who became a filmmaker in her 40s. At least that's when she started working on this first project of hers. Her fine art photography is included in permanent collections at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Brooklyn Museum, the Seattle Art Museum, just to name a few. She was also chair of the Art and Design Department at Cal Poly State University in San Luis Obispo, California, and she is currently still serving there as a professor emeritus. She has a new project that she is launching out into the world, which is called Mochitsuki. At least that's the working title right now. It is in development with PBS to come out later in the year, actually next year, I think, she said. And that tells the story of the intergenerational celebration of making mochi in the Japanese community during the new year. And I just got to watch a preview of that was 20 minutes long yesterday, and it's beautiful too. So there's a whole theme of intergenerational connection that goes as a leading line through Sky's work. And I'm really excited to talk to her about that today. So Sky, thank you so much for being with me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
I am thrilled. Okay, so let's go back to before you started working on Lives Well Lived.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
How did I get started down this journey, right? From being a photographer and an educator to being a filmmaker. So I was lucky enough to grow up in a 4-generational household with not only with my parents and my grandparents, but my great grandmother was still alive until I was 19.
Wow.
So I had this wonderful experience of having, I didn't even realize it was an intergenerational household, but it was that I grew up in. And I was super close to my grandmother. I mean, I grew up in her kitchen cooking with her, and that was always where the wonderful stories and love and wisdom were shared. And when I was approaching 50, My grandmother was also approaching 100, and she came out to visit me in California from Florida for the first time when she was 96. And she spent the month of August with me, which, if any of you have been to Florida in August, you know it's a great time to get out
Oh
and
my
come
goodness.
someplace like California. And, she was this amazing cook, but she never wrote a recipe down. And so I made it my mission to document her doing her cooking and to film her, because I wanted to see the gesture of her hands, hear the sound of her voice, not just write down the recipe, but really capture it in a different way. And that was really my first foray into filmmaking. I always tell my students, the more personal, the more universal whatever you're working on becomes. And my grandmother, like I said, spent 4 summers with me from 96 to 100, where she would come out for the month of August. And then when she was turning 100, I flew back with her for her 100th birthday party, and she was still working out at the gym at age 100, and she didn't start until she was 80. So it's never too late to start something new, including working out at the gym. And I just thought I better film her working out at the gym, because nobody's going to believe that at almost 100 she's still working out at the gym. And I know what an inspiration she was to me when I would think, oh, I'm too tired, and I would think of my grandmother lifting her little weights and doing her exercise bike, and I'd say, okay, get up and go do it, because her phrase was move it or lose it. And so I did a little film of her, and just like a 1-minute video. And I thankfully had a mic on her, and I said, Grandma, can you give me some words of wisdom? And she said things like, live life to the limits and be kind. And I came back from that trip, and I put this little video together of her at the gym. And I just thought, I'm looking at approaching 50. Here I have this incredible role model in my own family of somebody who has aged well, who is still aging well every day. She wanted to learn something new, and she was out there. And all I was seeing in the media at that point were like the negative aspects of aging and all the things that you could do to avoid aging, like, the cosmetic stuff that you have to use. I mean, it really was so depressing. And I think especially for women, that age 50, that half century mark, is a big moment. And I'm sure it is for men too, but I can speak for me as a woman. It was a big moment of like, what am I going to do with the next half of my life, and how do I want to model it? And just not seeing that out there in the media of what I could do positively. But like I said, having this amazing role model, my grandmother, and I thought, I need to find other people out there like my grandmother. I know they exist, and I want to film them and highlight them and show what life can be like. And, let's face it, as you mentioned, the one thing we all have in common is that we age every day. So instead of being fearful of it, we should embrace it and find ways to embrace it. And that was my mission, really. I sent out an email blast to my friends, family, and all the students alum that I've taught over the years at the university. And I said, here's this one little clip of my grandmother working out at the gym, and I'm going to do this project. I didn't know I was going to do a film yet. And I said, if you have somebody in your life that's as much an inspiration as my grandmother is to me, please nominate them for this project. And I was inundated by heartwarming nominations. And that was it. I spent the next 4 years interviewing 40 people with a collective life experience of 3,000 years. And my life has been forever changed as a result.
Gosh, I love that. I love so many things about what you just said. So it wasn't fully fledged as an idea that it was going to be a film at all.
No, no.
At what point did you say, I think I've got it. Did you just start recording, like, I don't know, what did you record with at first?
Well, I will tell you, I had, because I teach at a university, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this project. I should probably talk to some people in the social sciences department and people that teach the psychology of aging class, and say I'm embarking on this project, because I'm an artist, I'm not a social scientist, but since I have access to all these amazing people, why not ask them for their help? And
Love
so
that.
I had lunch with a number of people, and I said, hey, these are some of the questions I'm thinking of asking. What other questions should I add to this list? And so I came up with their help with a series of 20 questions that were a starting point to ask everyone the same questions. Because I think the hardest part when you interview somebody is sitting down with them and getting them to open up and having questions. Because I think if you just say, tell me about yourself, that is just too broad. So I
Yeah,
think having these very specific questions was really helpful as a starting point. And then we certainly went off on tangents, but at least gave a framework to start the dialogue. And then I think, well, you asked about when did I realize I was going to be making a film. I think that when I set out on this quest, it was really to find the words of wisdom of these people who are 75 plus, like my grandmother. And at a certain point, and I remember the point very clearly, I was interviewing this woman, Marion Wolf, who, if you haven't seen the film, she was 8 years old when she came over. It was right before World War II started, and in the United Kingdom, the Quakers were trying to save as many Jewish children as they could and house them. I mean, they just like fostered all these kids, and they saved 10,000 children, and she was one of them. And she still had the cardboard number that she had around her neck at the age of 8 years old.
that
And
was
I still get
unbelievable
chills
seeing that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
still get chills when I think about that, because I think, what was I doing at 8 years old, and what an impactful story that was. And so I think at that moment, I thought this really has to be more than just like these little webisodes or whatever I was doing with it. I really wanted to make a film because I thought it would have a bigger impact. And it became more than just about the words of wisdom of the people that I was interviewing. It was also about their history and their stories of resilience, because I think those stories of resilience are really resonate and really can help people when you hear somebody and what they went through. And it's one thing to read about something in a history book or just a book, but another thing to hear the firsthand account of somebody that lived through it. And I think it helps us in our own daily lives to think about how we can be resilient and move through certain things that are happening to us.
Yeah, I connect so much more to history or historical events through the journey of one person, through one
Mhm.
person's story. And sometimes that's even historical fiction. But when it's well-researched fiction, even that really steeps you in the time, that to me, and each of these people's stories, there was such resilience with each of them. That was
Mhm.
one of the things that I pulled, that it was so inspiring from it. Um, so I want to know, I'm also a photographer, and filmmaking. A lot of people might think, oh, no big deal. So you're a photographer, so you made a film. That's totally natural.
No,
Can you
very
speak to
different,
that?
very different. I mean, one of the things that I had to learn, and that's as a photographer, you can photograph somebody, get one good photograph in an instant, and then maybe write up their story. But when you're a filmmaker, it's not just a single moment. They are telling the story, and it's about pulling the story from them so that it's in their own words rather than you taking the words and maybe rewriting it in some way. And so I think it's much more difficult. It's also, you have to think about one of the things that I really was cognizant of in Lives Well Lived was looking at putting historical footage over what somebody was saying so that it more connected the viewer with that moment. And so there's just a lot more dynamics that are going on when you're doing filmmaking. I do think that my photographic skills certainly helped in filmmaking, because I would go into somebody's house and really look around at where was the best light, where was a place that I could put somebody that said something about that person. And that goes back to my
Yeah.
photographic sense of like looking for the best place to take a portrait of someone. So I definitely think that helped. But I also think that filmmaking really brought together all the things that I love doing. I'm a musician as well. And so that timing, that pacing with music, with the way that people are talking. And then I love storytelling. I would always, even when I was a kid, I would sit down at the dinner table with my grandparents who were Italian. And, after dinner, when the food and nuts came out and the desserts, that's when all the stories came out. And I would quite literally just put a tape recorder on the table and record their stories, because I knew something amazing was happening at that time. So I have always been interested in storytelling. So I feel like filmmaking has brought together my visual love, auditory, and storytelling, like all the things that I really enjoy doing. I get to put it all into one package.
I love that. So amazing that you have always been a documentarian, and I can relate to that. My dad passed away at the end of this last year in 2023, and he had dementia for 10 years, and I felt such an incredible need to record him. in those last years,
Hmm.
and I'm so glad I did, because now I have audio, just voice recordings that were from my phone. Went to lunch with him one day and asked him some stories, and he just came up with these fascinating stories of his time in the army, and because he was stationed in Japan. And I don't even know how much of what he told me is actually real, or if it's like a mishmash because he was pretty far along. But I treasure those, and I can totally see that this all ties in. Photography is storytelling. Film, I mean, you're leaning to storytelling, and the documentation of real people is really cool. So when we spoke before today, we were talking about your learning process as a filmmaker, and I would love to go a little bit into that, about how you learned to edit.
Hmm.
Do you want to speak to that just
Sure.
a little
Yeah. I
bit?
mean, I think, we have a motto at the university that I teach at Cal Poly, which is learn by doing. And I think that I was a living example of that. I have always had this belief of, instead of saying why, I say why not to things. So I am just curious and I follow my passion and I make it happen. So with filmmaking, when I first decided that I was going to start going into filmmaking, I really had no idea what I was doing. I was lucky enough that the digital cameras at that point were also now moving into being able to shoot video. So that was really how I got into it. It's like, oh, I have this camera that will allow me to also do video. Maybe I should try that out with my grandmother. I didn't realize I should have had a separate mic on her. So my first videos of her were terrible. I still have them because I treasure them. But, what I did was that, at the time, Apple had this program where if you bought a computer, you got one-on-one help with somebody from the Apple Store. And they have a program called Final Cut, which allows you to edit video. And there were three guys at the Apple Store that I called my Apple gurus, who knew about video and film, and they loved it. And they loved that I was so curious. And I didn't even know the right questions to Google, to ask, to look up on YouTube of how you do anything. So they informed me of what the right words were to use, and they were so sweet. And in fact, they got credit in my film, because I just that was how I did it. I'd go in there and they would help me not only with Final Cut, but they would help me with sound and everything else, and kind of educate me of how to do that. I also think it's really important. I still do this to this day, which is, if you don't know how to do something, it's great to find people that know how to do it better than you and ask for their help. I think that sometimes people have a problem admitting they don't know how to do something. And
Mm.
I don't know if it's that fear that, oh, I'm going to show my vulnerability if I say I don't know how to do this, but I am very open to saying, I know this is what I want to get done. I don't know how to get there. You know how to do it really well. Will you work with me? Can I hire you to help me get this done? And so I did hire an editor in the beginning. I ended up taking it over towards the end. But, I think that knowing somebody that knows how to do it well, and kind of becoming part of that group, I think is really helpful. And being open to that, being open to say, I don't know how to do this. That's the hardest words for some people to say.
And I have a theory that I think it gets harder for us as we get older to ask for that kind of help, because I feel like yeah, speaking for myself, I'll just say that I feel like, well, I should have my stuff together. You kind of, you want to look like you know what you're doing by at this point in your life, and I think that I'm not alone in that. Is my guess is that a lot of people don't ask for help, or don't want to become beginners at something, because when you're a beginner, you're not good at the thing. And I love that you took this on and dove in,
Mhm.
to figure out what you didn't know. And, I'm assuming there mistakes were made along the way, and
Oh,
you had to
yeah.
deal with those and
And
get better
sometimes,
as you went.
sometimes some parts I couldn't put in the film because they weren't recorded well, or there was something with the sound. One time, I was just telling my students this the other day, that I had a cord that wasn't working. I didn't have headphones on and I didn't know it. And we did the whole interview and I couldn't use any of it. And, you learn those lessons
Want to bang
sometimes
your
the
head
hard
against the
way.
wall, right?
Yeah. And then, thankfully I was lucky because the people that I was interviewing, they were kind. I went back multiple times and interviewed them, and they were very open to the fact that, like, I would tell them, I would be honest with them and tell them, hey, look, this is what happened. Can we redo this? But you know what? I learned something every time that I did that. The next interview is always better because I had really listened to that first interview and knew what I wanted to ask, maybe and push in a different direction a little bit further. And so I use those as learning opportunities. And instead of getting really upset about it, I would just say, okay, well, I learned from this and it wasn't meant to be. And the next time's going to be better.
Love that. Wisdom for the ages right there. Wisdom for the ages. Hey, we're going to take a quick break here so I can tell you about an awesome resource that I think you're going to love. Here's the thing. We are always works in progress. Do you find yourself wondering, what do I want to be when I grow up? If so, then I think you're going to want to subscribe to We're All Getting Older, which is a weekly newsletter written by Lou Blazer. It's all about continuing to grow and get better in the second half of our lives. We're All Getting Older is a sponsor for this podcast, and I'll tell you, I get so much benefit from reading Lou's newsletter every week, and I think you will too. She writes the newsletter for midlifers who believe in getting better as we get older and making the most of life's second half. So if you want to subscribe to that, it is on Substack, and you can easily find a link to subscribe at loublazer.com. That's loublaser.com. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming. I wanted to talk also about that you ended up turning your home into an Airbnb.
Yeah.
In order to make this happen?
Absolutely. Because as a creative person, one of the things that really bothers me is that a lot of times people will try and get creatives to work for free or for exposure. And, that doesn't pay our bills. So I am very careful about when I work with people, it's my passion project. I make sure that everybody gets paid who's working with me. And I was in the beginning trying to write grants to help fund the film. I got one small grant from the university to help hire students, that was more, I was teaching them more than anything. But it was really hard to raise the funds to make a film like this. And so I thought, I'm spending all this time writing grants and not working on the film, but I have this house where I have some extra rooms, and I just started renting out rooms on my house through Airbnb that helped fund my film. And what was great was that the people that stayed at my house through Airbnb, I would tell them that I was working on this film. And then when the film went into film festivals, they were all over the country cheering me on, wanting to go to the film festival to cheer the film on, because they had, quotes, had helped fund the film in a way by staying at my Airbnb.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I still do that. I mean, it's really helpful to have that extra income. I'm also lucky because I do have I had a day job until I retired of teaching. So I had a steady income. There are a lot of independent filmmakers out there that this is all they do, and it is really not an easy road. But I have, I'm lucky that I have that stable income, and that this is something extra that I can do and fund it through renting out rooms in my house, basically.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. I have to say that what's coming to mind for me right now, well, first of all, I just can't help but think of the phrase, where there's a will, there's a way, based on everything that you've just told me. I was going to go in one direction, but I think I want to ask you first, what have you learned about yourself through this process?
Yeah, that's a good question. What have I learned about myself through this process? I think that one of the things that was really important that I learned from all the 40 people that I interviewed was that the people that are successful in aging have a sense of purpose, and that purpose can change over time. I think that was also key, that your sense of purpose, we think we have one sense of purpose, and maybe we go down that direction, and then our world gets shaken a little bit when we need to change, like especially if you retire and you're doing something else. And so I think having that sense of purpose for me, I was certainly, when I was turning 50, at a crossroads of like, what did I want to do? I'd actually I think we talked about this. I had gone to yoga teacher training to maybe be a yoga teacher, was thinking, oh, I want to give up on photography and I don't know if I want to be a fine artist anymore. And then all of a sudden I started working on this film. So I think I was at a crossroads of what my sense of purpose was. And once I found the sense of purpose again, of being a filmmaker, being a storyteller, bringing these stories of connecting generations out there into the world, you know, that really resonated with me. And so I think that's something that's super important that I learned from working on the film. I think the other thing, because you can't help but, you know, be transformed after you listen to the wisdom of 40 amazing people. And I think that the other thing is to really live more fully in the moment. I think that when I was younger, I was so busy just trying to make a living, trying to, you know, help raise kids, do all this stuff. And I didn't really appreciate the moment as much as I do now. So I really try and take time every day to just appreciate, you know, the beautiful weather or a moment, the smell of a flower, whatever it is. I really try and appreciate the moment a little bit more than I did in the past. And I make decisions based on that a little bit more, like, what am I going to remember that I did? This one thing or this other thing. And, you know, usually it's like more about spending time with family and friends and like getting a task done, because I'm not going to remember that, but I will remember the memories of spending time with family and friends.
Absolutely. My laundry will stay
Yes.
in a pile. My clean laundry will stay in a pile on the sofa for quite a while, I will say, for that very reason. That's the ticket. But you know, there's so much that you just said that I can relate to. And I think that what I'm hearing from you, this taking time to notice the little things, to enjoy the moment, I will say that I think that that is one of the benefits of aging and getting older. I think that because that is certainly what I am attempting to lean into more at this
Mhm.
point in my life. I'm 55, almost 56, and that idea of being versus doing is something that I'm really exploring. And so that's what I'm hearing and what you're saying. You know what? When I watched the film, the other thing that I noticed was a common through line from the people in your film was purpose, for sure, was there. Resilience was absolutely there for so many of their stories, and this sense of curiosity
Mhm.
that most of them seem to embrace, either naturally or purposefully, it seemed.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that, you know, one of the things that keeps us having a sense of purpose is also having that sense of curiosity and wanting to learn more. And so my grandmother used to say that she didn't want to die because she wanted to learn something new every day. And I think that sense of being in that space of curiousness, I think that's what really does keep us going, that we want to continue to learn, to grow. And I think that's a misnomer that younger people, maybe I did as a younger person, have about older people, like, oh, you know, they've learned all they're going to learn, but that's so not true. I mean, I think that now reflecting back on it, I realize that at every age, people want to be curious and want to learn. And I think that's where people thrive, is when they continue to do that. You know, I think that the worst thing that someone can do is say, well, I can't do that because of my age. And I think that sure, there are certain physical limitations that I think happen, but there are certainly so many possibilities that are open and so many things that we can still do. And I think the people that thrive, at least that I met in my film, were people that looked at the things that they could still do and looked at those as possibilities and with a sense of curiosity and adventure.
Yeah. You know, as you were speaking about that whole thing about, you know, limiting what you think you can do because of your age, I'll say that that cuts both ways. And I did that to myself when I was younger. I would say, oh, I'm too young to do that. I don't have enough experience. And then all of a sudden
Yeah.
I felt too old to do something. You know, before I knew it, it was like,
Uh-huh.
whoa, when did I go from being too young to too old? How did that happen? Crazy. But it's all stories we tell ourselves, you know,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. It
Speaking of,
certainly is. And you know, my new book that just came out, which is really about what I learned along the way from interviewing these 40 people. The tagline is resilience, positivity, and purpose at every age. And I think that there is something about that, that no matter what age we are, we want to have that sense of resilience, positivity, and purpose. And I think that's something that I've certainly learned in doing all the intergenerational work that I've been doing, is that we want to feel that sense of purpose, whether we're 20, 30, 80, 90, 100, doesn't matter. We still want to feel like we have that sense of purpose.
Yeah, for sure. Amen. So the book that you just referenced, that has the same title as the film, right? It's Lives Well Lived.
Lives Well Lived, Generations. Yes.
Lives Well Lived, Generations. Terrific. And so that tells a little bit more of your own journey through making that film.
Yeah,
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it's a little more of my journey of making the film, the lessons I learned along the way, how you can implement it in your own life. And that's the first half of the book. And the second half of the book is devoted completely to connecting generations. So one of the things that I really try and do now is, with the film, I worked with a psychology of aging professor here at the university, and we do intergenerational projects where we show the film to older adults and to students, and they get to know each other over the quarter or semester, and we have a big wrap party, and it's just wonderful to see. Of course, I feel like we're combating the stereotypes of ageism or aging one story and one connection at a time, because it's really easy to have an ism about another group if you don't know somebody from that other group. So how can we break down those barriers? We're in this age segregated world, and how can we maybe change that whole story and make it a less age segregated world? And I love the number 40, so I interviewed 40 people that are doing amazing work around the globe connecting generations, whether it's through an intergenerational symphony or co-generational housing. I mean, there's some incredible projects out there that are happening in order to hopefully inspire people to be in a more intergenerational, world, and to think about ways that they can also connect generations, because it's the way of the future. It's the way we need to be in the future. We cannot continue these age segregated silos.
Absolutely. I am so excited to read that book, Sky. Oh my goodness. I had no idea what was in it. So that is super exciting. And I when we spoke before, I talked about that I'd love to do an intergenerational screening of the film and have something like that happen here in my community. And I was not just paying lip service to that. I have been thinking about where and who and what who I can get in touch with. So I am really behind your mission 100%.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. So one of the people in your film actually inspired your upcoming film, right?
Yes.
Can you speak about that?
Yeah, so one of the people in the film, in the Lives Will Live film, was Susie Edo Bauman, who it was really important for me to interview somebody who was of Japanese American descent, who had been incarcerated during World War II purely because of the fact that they were of Japanese descent. And Susie is this amazing woman. When I interviewed her, she was 95. She's 103 now, still going strong. And she, talked about her time being incarcerated, but also talked about this ceremony called Mochitsuki. That is a ceremony where Japanese, started in the 8th century in Japan, and Japanese Americans a lot of them still do it to this day, where they make mochi to bring in the new year. And mochi is rice that's pounded until it's very smooth and then made into round balls. And you probably have seen that, like mochi ice cream. That's probably an American introduction to mochi, is through Trader Joe's or Costco selling mochi ice cream or something to that effect. But mochi itself is quite literally just pounded rice, a very particular kind of rice that's pounded until it's smooth. You don't see the grains of rice at all anymore. And they're made into these small balls. And it's such a wonderful ceremony. So she invited me to come to one of these Mochitsuki ceremonies that was happening here locally. And there were people from up and down the coast that came, generations coming together to make something, to create something together. And I love this idea of food being the thing, that the catalyst that brings generations together. Because I think for me, as I said before, I grew up in my grandmother's kitchen, and that was when the wisdom and the love and the sharing, that was when that all happened, was when we were cooking together. So to see that in another culture and through another food tradition, I think was just wonderful. And so the film is, as you saw the 20-minute preview, we're doing an hour-long version for PBS, which will air next May of 2025 for Asian American Pacific Islander Month. And but you can see a preview now. It's on our website, and we're just loving getting it out there in the world. And it's the website's just mochi-film.com.
That is very cool. And how long is that preview going to be available for people?
That'll be available until the end of July.
Awesome. I love how one thing has led to another
Yeah.
in what you're doing. This started as just this organic need to document your grandmother's cooking, and look at what it's blossomed into because you said, why not?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm working on another film that is kind of like that as well, which is I don't know if we have the time to talk about. Do we have what's her?
I'm so excited. So this is film number 3 already.
This is film number 3. I actually did
real
another
quickly,
one, so it's film number 4.
I do want to ask you, how long did the first film take you to make? It took a while, right?
It took a long time. So it was 4 years of filming and then another year of editing. And so 5 years total to get it out there in the world. And
I just want people to know that, because I think so often we look at the finished product and it's just there in the world.
Right.
And you don't think about the fact that somebody slaved basically and worried and sweated and, you know, put their home up for as an Airbnb to rent out rooms to make money. I mean, I'm just so inspired by that whole process. You know, I went to the local Mac store to use the Genius Bar to get help. You know what I mean? I mean, these are the things that you don't think about when you look at somebody's success, when you look at a film that is now, you know, you've got PBS working with you on these intergenerational programs. I mean, that didn't come from nothing. That came from you digging in and saying why not, first of all, and then digging in and making it happen. I mean, kudos. If I could clap right now and not throw my mic all into wonkiness, I would totally do that. So I'm just going to give you Zoom glitter, which is me, you know, wiggling my fingers in the air. But let's, talk about the third film. That's exciting.
So the third film, again, I leave myself very open to possibilities and I follow the threads when they come about. So I had done a very special small screening of the Mochitsuki film, just 5 minutes, down in Santa Barbara. And I could not get down there because the weather was horrible and they'd closed the road. So I couldn't make it down there, but I put together a little video where I said, this is why I made the film. And if any of you did Mochi when you were a kid, please reach out to me because I'd love to hear from you. I knew I wanted to make an expanded version of the film. And I had this one person who reached out to me. His name was Paul Mori. And he said, oh, I did Mochi when I was a kid. And we had a really nice conversation. I had looked him up because I always like to see who I'm going to talk to. And I realized that he was a bassoon teacher at Westmont College in Santa Barbara. And I, being the band geek that I was, played bassoon in high school. I mean, it is such a, like, so few people play that instrument that I was
right.
Like,
that's like French horn, right? Bassoon, right. French horn.
Right. It is, we are like a club. And so I mentioned to him, hey, I saw you teach at Westmont College and I play bassoon. I don't play anymore, but I played bassoon. And he said, oh yeah, also the conductor of this group called the Primetime Band. And I said, wait a second, tell me a little bit more about what this is. And the band is about 75 people strong, made up of people primarily in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Played instruments when they were in junior high or high school and put them away for many years and then come back to them later in life. And I love that sense of community that's formed. They rehearse every Tuesday night and then they perform throughout Santa Barbara County. And I said, I'm in. I need to come down and see that band. And I still play flute. I brought my flute down with me, sat in with the band, didn't bring any camera gear, just sat in with them and just fell in love with it. And so I have spent the last year getting to know all the people in the band, interviewing them. And a number of the people in the band are part of a program called the Music Van, which is quite literally a van full of instruments that goes into third grade classrooms and introduces 8-year-olds to instruments, many of whom have never touched an instrument in their whole lives. And I love this cycle of older adults coming back to instruments later in life and paying it forward and introducing young kids to instruments. Many of it might change some of their lives. So, that intergenerational connection is there in anything that I do that's, going to be present. And that film, I'm hoping, will premiere at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival in February of next year, because it's the band's 30th anniversary and the film festival's 40th anniversary. So my big idea, you have to put these big ideas out there, is to have the film premiere at the festival and then have the band play after the film premieres. So I'll keep you posted on that one.
That is so exciting. Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't believe how much you got going on, lady.
That's a little bit.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me and share this experience. I'm
my pleasure.
Very excited to share this with my listeners. And where can people find you to keep track of everything you've got going on in the world?
Yeah, the best place is probably my skybergmanproductions.com website, because that has everything that I'm doing is on that website, and it links to the other websites for each of the projects, whether it's a book, one of the movies, everything is kind of housed there, and then you can splinter off from there to whatever you're interested in. Yeah.
All right, cool. So for anybody who's driving or doing something else right now, you can't get to right over to your computer, I will have everything for you in the show notes. And just again, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.
Well, there you have it. I hope you found Sky's journey as inspiring as I did. I really love that she followed her instincts, which led her from a personal passion project to a new career as a filmmaker with a focus on the power of intergenerational connections, which clearly she's just stoked by. She's got, project after project she's doing now. And from learning to edit film from the people at the Mac Store Genius Bar to turning her home into an Airbnb to fund her film, I mean, Sky's story is a testament to resilience and creativity and the power of purpose at any age. I really recommend watching Lives Well Lived if you want a major jolt of inspiration and a fresh look at what's possible as we get older. And don't forget to pick up a copy of her book that's just been released, which talks about what she personally learned from the journey of doing this. If you want more information about Sky Bergman, where to watch her films, or get a copy of the book, you can find a link to her website in the show notes. You can just go to latebloomerliving.com/podcast and look for episode 192. Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. Your support helps us continue to bring you the stories of remarkable people making a difference in the world. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a fantastic week. Stay safe and well. Talk soon.